Hi. Apparently my last video was quite quiet, so I'm going to yell, and hopefully that works better because I'm not very technologically savvy when it comes to these phone recordings. I have no idea how to plug in the headphones and mic. So here we go. Me talking loudly. Welcome to the playlist about how your personal dreams and self-image affect the lives and the skills of your child, especially as it relates to autism. So that's what these playlisted videos are going to be about. I'll probably make about 4. Okay, before I go on, remember to like and subscribe, and if you want more information, I also have a book called Miracles Are Made, A Real-Life Guide to Autism. There, everyone said I'm giving away too much and not selling enough, so there you go. If you want to get that, any place books are sold, you can order it if it isn't there, or you can go to my website, LynetteLouise.com or brainbody.net. All right, all that's in the mess down below. Okay, so here we go. Let's talk about your dreams and how they affect your child. Now, I'm doing this with stories, lived stories that I've observed. I've either come in midway and changed how it's functioning, or I've been a neighbor and observed it and they didn't want my advice, or I've actually been hired to set things straight at the beginning or at the very end when it was a mess. So I'm going to mix them up a little bit so that the people aren't recognizable. But this is a common one, what I'm going to share with you today. So it's a mom and a dad, and the dad's a little bit older and has this sort of, my family looks beautiful when I go to the company picnic appearance in his head. Even in the pandemic when there's no company appearance, he still had this idea that his family should look neat and tidy. And he was fortunate that he married someone who had a similar vision. So together, this is the thing they had in common. They both believed that a neat and tidy appearance meant success. So they were very careful with their own clothing. Hence, I'm wearing a sparkly top today to sort of, underscore the story. I'm not very careful with my clothing, by the way, but today I was a little bit. So they have this everybody's clean, everybody's well-dressed, and everybody's organized in how they present themselves to the world. This is a really important story right now because due to social media and all of the picture-perfect homes that you're seeing and not seeing what's going on the outside of the, I should show you the mess, right? I'm afraid to move the camera, but I've got mess everywhere. So we frame it, and we show that. Well, this is how they wanted to live. They wanted to frame their lives as they move forward into the world. How did that play out? So it's a fine vision. It's not even a huge dream like stardom or something. And you might say, what's wrong with wanting to be well-dressed and clean and present the world a smiley, organized group? Well, nothing, unless that's the first thought instead of what comes out of the raising of the child. So let's think about that. This particular mom was doing most of the work. The dad was going to work. She was staying at home. They had 2 kids. The one child was neurotypical and handled it fairly well, all of these no's, no, don't put that in your mouth, no, don't wear those socks, no, don't, right, everything was no, 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 no. And then once that was adhered to, once that child looked and presented herself as kind of picture perfect, then there were lots of yeses. And that felt acceptable to the family. First you teach all of these things that have to be done, this self-help kind of presentation stuff, and then you move out into the world. Now, I can talk about the neurotypical child and tell you some of the downside to that, and I'm going to hit on that for a second, just to get a picture before we move into the autistic child, who is the second born and a boy. So, yes, she learned how to, present herself well. But what she was doing that whole time as a young child learning the no's. Don't put that in your mouth. No, don't wear that. No, don't say that. No, don't have a dirty face. All of these things. What she was doing was pulling inside herself her urges and her wishes. And yes, she did shift some of that desire into their desired idea. So she wasn't fully sort of tucked inside, but there was this killing of the impulsive, beautiful, curious human being. And we do that with our school system too. We sort of kill it, and then when they're all graduated, we say, okay, you can have it back now. We've shaped you. But they've lost touch with it. It ceased to exist. Or it exists in such a small, minuscule amount inside them that we're asking them to put something back in that isn't there. So you could see it on her, but given our world, it kind of fit. You know, it was okay. She was struggling. She was cutting. So she was finding a way to sort of express herself and do it on herself without looking bad, because the cutting was hidden. Fortunately, that was a short period of her life, and she did okay. But her brother, now when it's an autistic person, they don't kind of make their way through all the noise and the mess without our guidance. And so if you have an autistic child and you're thinking, no, don't put that in your mouth. No, they may be learning the world through their mouth. Or, no, don't have dirty hands. No, don't wear those clothes. No, put your shoes on. You can't go barefoot. You know, there's so many no's that the child who is trying to learn how to learn and whose impulse is to stim and do a repetitive behavior really digs deep into the repetitive behavior, because that's their freedom place, right? And you, the parent, in this case the mom and the dad, mostly the mom, think that that's just autism, that has nothing to do with your vision of presenting this perfect, well-dressed group. And so he does eventually become very well-dressed and sort of not, you know, mouthing everything and quiet, but he stims hard and he starts to hit himself. Now you have a neurotypical girl cutting by this point before I'm brought in, and you have a young autistic boy who's hurting himself a lot. Why would it happen that way? Well, if you have no freedom, and let's use the autistic boy because most of the audience is dealing with that. If you have no freedom to express yourself and to experiment and to learn the value of clean versus dirty, of this shirt versus that shirt, according to presentation, then you're stuck in that paradigm of, look, I have a sensory disorder, and the ugly shirt that you hate is the one that feels good on me. The one that you like makes me want to scream and rip it off, and since I'm in a state of wanting to scream and rip it off, and you won't let me, I spend the whole time going, don't rip it off, don't rip it off, don't rip it, it hurts, don't rip it, it hurts, don't, ah! And before you know it, I'm hiding deeper and deeper and deeper into my stim in order to behave for you, and I'm what you call hurting myself, but really in some ways helping myself, because that sensory hit I gave myself was really just changing where the sensation was so that I didn't have to feel this all over buzzing like bees. So you got your presentation, but you sent your child deeper into autism. I think this is a common problem. And learning, I have this thing I call Lynette's Law, 4 compliments to 1 correction. And I tried to teach it to this mom when I first met her. I'm like, okay, there's way too many no's. In fact, if you've seen Fix It in 5, which is my series working with the mom in Uganda, I said exactly that. I remember sitting at a coffee table going, too many no's, right? So if you have 4 compliments to 1 correction, what you're doing then is you're shoring them up and you're saying, yes, 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 of course, of course, of course. Oh, but can you correct this, or can you shift this, or can you shape this? And that way the person is feeling sort of open and able to learn from you and get the correction that you're asking for and shift and grow. But when you think, no, 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 and then I'll give you compliments, by the time you get to the compliments, you've already done the harm. And the child has had to dig deep into themselves to try and help themselves, because you've really left them alone with their own problem and only concerned yourself with the external world. This mom, fortunately, she did have that as her vision, but she also had the vision of being a quick learner. And I was able to tap into that and actually get them to do a couple of camping trips where they were just really learning about the world they were in, and they lived in a tent, and she hated every minute. But she came back a little different, and we had a lot to talk about. And so there was a lot of change that happened. And they're doing fine, and he's much better, and her daughter's not cutting, and they're a little bit messier. So, priorities are people, not property at the moment, or things on your body presenting you to the world. And they went off social media. So here I am putting on social media a story about a woman who helped herself by going off social media. It's not that social media is the problem, it's how you relate to it. So think about your dream. Think about, so many of us feel as if, well, how does who I am and how I feel about the world negatively impact my child? And that's why I'm doing this little short series. I want you to understand that who you are, how you embrace the world, what you think is important, absolutely shapes the choices you make and the way that your child is put out there into the world. Absolutely. So if you think that you can't say good job to the child until they're perfectly dressed and the house is clean, you've missed a lot of opportunities. And if your child has a learning challenge, that may be too many opportunities missed. Now, I did mention something that I sort of let fly by, and I'm going to say it again for you in case you didn't realize it. And that is that a child with autism has a sensory issue. And a lot of people think that means they get overwhelmed and have a meltdown when things are loud. But it's more than that. And often what you're asking them to do, the clothes you're asking them to wear, the shoes, the socks, the underwear, the smells, the sights. Smell is you can't stop it, right? It's very hard. You can't put your hand in front of your child's face and say, smell, don't go to my child. You can cover his ears easier than you can cover his nose, actually. So, because you can actually taste a smell. So it's pretty hard, right? You don't want to smother them. So they have a sensory issue. And what you want to do, if you're really going to help your child, is check on yourself and see in what ways am I caring about what's happening to my child from this sensory-driven world more than I'm caring about my child. And don't be afraid to ask that question. We all think we care about our child more than ourselves. But then, right, you take another look and you go, oh, my dream, my self-image is standing in the way. And in some ways benefiting the child. So because of this woman's dream, her child was also well-dressed, well cared for, clean. And these things matter too. You don't want to completely become someone else and drop it, but you want to shape it so that your priorities are correct. And, I'll be honest, we gave the child some neurofeedback, which helped to reduce the angst a little bit. And we shaped the mom's brain a little bit with some neurofeedback. So her stress load over this whole issue, her openness to learning was greater. And her stress was less. So, you also want to reach out and get some therapy if you need. I'm Dr. Lynette Louise, the Brain Broad, and you've been listening to How Your Dream Affects Your Child.